Well, Bishop White, thank you so much for being with me today. And I want to say thank you to our pastors who are tuning in today for this Kentucky Pastors Survey webinar. We're so excited that you have tuned in tonight.
Yeah, I mean, this may be the first of its kind.
Yeah.
Which hopefully we'll see more of this, because it is important to us that here at the state office that we hear from you and that we know what you're thinking and know what's going to benefit you, because I say it all the time, we're here as a resource.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the things I want to celebrate before we even get into the data of what our pastors said is we had such a great response rate. We calculated at 81% of the pastors in the state of Kentucky took time out of their busy schedules and their ministries to help us hear their voices. And if you've ever been involved in data collection, 81% response rate is almost unheard of. So thank you, Pastor, for taking your time to contribute to this conversation, to let your voices be heard, because if we didn't have a high participation rate, then this wouldn't be valid data.
No.
But now we have some excellent things that we can go through tonight.
We do. And I think they're going to really enjoy what they learned from it and what we've learned from it. So I'm excited. I'm excited about it.
It's been very helpful. One of the things that we do just want to point out as well is that you guys answered a lot of questions. And a 1 hour webinar does not give us the amount of time necessary to go through every single question. And we also wanted to be mindful of our commitment to have confidentiality.
Yes.
Some of the questions had open-ended responses. And so we're not showing all of those open-ended responses. We're putting those into categories and things. So we want you to know that if there's a question you don't see us talk about tonight, we have some time constraints, but we also want to keep that commitment to confidentiality.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what this office is built on, is in our relationship with you and serving you is based on confidentiality and trying to do our best to serve you in that way. So
yeah, absolutely. So should we just jump right
into it? Let's jump right in.
All right. So the first section that you all participated in was leadership development and discipleship, and analyzing that state ministry. And so we're just going to go through some of the questions that you all responded to. And the first one was, which of the following are beneficial to your local church's leadership development? And we ask you to choose everything that apply. And so we had some great responses. 50% of our pastors say lunch and learns are very helpful to our church leadership. State of the state Zoom calls, almost 52% or 53% there. Empower had almost 45%. And our online trainings at 63%.
Yeah.
So, I thought that was really interesting to see online trainings had the highest percentage.
Yeah, people are busy these days.
Absolutely.
And so getting content to them when it's most convenient to them, that's something we're interested in for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's good for us to know so that we know, okay, let's steer more in the direction of where we're having a high impact on churches. And then we got into some of the nitty gritty of it and asked the question, what are your greatest leadership development challenges right now? And again, we asked you to choose all that apply. Overwhelmingly, the highest percentage on there was 63% raising new leaders. Can you just speak to that for a moment?
That says it all, because, we look at where we are in the church and we see that we need more people in the harvest field.
Yes.
Right? The harvest is ripe.
Yeah.
But we need laborers.
Yes, we do.
And so I tell you, and the pastors are at just a prime situation there to be able to train up new leaders and mentor them. So we'll be talking more about that.
Yeah.
But that's a great stat.
Yeah, and the next one, that was the next highest percentage on there, really goes hand in hand with it, was training existing leaders at 37%. So we have pastors saying, well, one, we need to identify and to raise up new leaders, but we also need to equip the leaders that we have right now. And to me, as leadership development discipleship coordinator, it's actually encouraging to see these percentages, because that shows me that the heart of our pastors are to raise up leaders, are to train leaders. And so that tells me that our pastors are open to that. They want to receive it. And there's an open door of opportunity for us to walk in there.
Right. Some of the other ones, succession planning, volunteer burnout, discipleship systems, ministerial licensing process, continuing education compliance, And then I think we have good systems. I mean, all of those are pretty good percentages there
Yeah.
in the 20 plus percentile,
Yeah.
a lot of that. So we see that, and it's good to get that feedback from them.
Absolutely. And those are things that we can weave into our programming when it comes to Lunch and Learns,
Right.
when it comes to State of the State Zooms or other online trainings. That gives us a lot of good data to work from. And then we ask the question, would you prefer leadership training to be one of these types? So we ask about in-person, hybrid, which is online and in-person, online only, regional, or statewide. And this was really telling as well, because the lowest percentages here were statewide and in person.
Yeah.
Which I think is very informative for us, because I think 9 times out of 10 we're trying to do something statewide. We're trying to do something that is in person, and certainly those opportunities are so beneficial to the church, right?
Yeah, because that's where we get this camaraderie.
Yes.
We get the relational aspect. We
Yeah.
we continue to build those connections with
Yeah.
people. And I think that's one of the things in our DNA in the Church of God of Prophecy is that we do have connection beyond our local church.
Yeah.
And so that is interesting, because we tend to do that for those reasons, to keep that cohesiveness.
Yeah.
But we see also the need for
Yes.
more convenience, I guess you'd
Absolutely.
say.
Yeah, and so I think having the opportunity for online and in person, or just online, or us doing regional trainings where you can come and just learn alongside those pastors in your district, in your region. Again, that gives us great information
Right.
to know, hey, we can do some smaller scale things that might have even greater impact than some of our statewide events.
That's
So
true.
I think
That's
that
true.
was great. And then we asked this question, which I thought was interesting. What type of training or coaching would be beneficial to you in the next 12 months? And we're going to show you our top 3 responses. Bishop White, you want to read those off for us?
So church growth and outreach, I think, was by far the largest, right? Where you guys are really interested in growing your church and reaching people. Then leadership development and raising leaders, and then discipleship systems. All of this confirms what they said earlier,
Yeah.
right? Is that new leaders and building your church, it's vitally important to you, and it's important to us too.
Yeah,
We got to
absolutely.
figure out ways to continue to help you do that.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed throughout the survey, and I think our pastors will catch this as well, is that there was kind of some overarching themes that were going through it. And you'll see outreach, leadership development, discipleship systems. It's not just here where there are top 3 responses, but as we get into some of the other data, we're going to see that as well. And then we ask, which of the following would be most beneficial to you? Direct coaching, mentoring, consultation opportunities, or group learning. And high percentages there of group learning coming in at 55%. But then we also had a significant portion that said mentoring at almost 19%, and consultation opportunities at 21%. What might that look like in practicality at the state level, Bishop White?
The group learning, again, is a little, if we're doing online, we've got to figure out ways to do online group learning, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
If it's not in person, so to speak, we've got to figure out ways to get people together in cohorts, so that you can learn with others. The consultation opportunities, the mentoring, I think these are prime opportunities for some of our structural leadership tiers, like our regional presbyters. If they were able to meet with our pastors and train that way. Plus, too, there's some people that are just wired to mentor and to train and to help and to encourage others, and we want to identify those people and get them serving and helping in those areas.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that's important to point out here too is that if a pastor is saying, hey, I would love to have some mentoring, I would love to have some consultation opportunities, that's going to require our pastors to take the first action step.
That's exactly right.
Because we did want to do this in a confidential manner, and we didn't collect any data of who said what. So we know 18% said we would like some mentoring, and we know 21% said we would really appreciate some consultation opportunities. we don't know who you are. So you could be watching this video right now. We don't know your names. We don't have you on a list here. So we need you to reach out to the state office, either myself or Bishop White or your district supervisor. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to be the person mentoring you or consulting you. It doesn't even mean that Bishop White will be. It may be him, but it may also be us saying, you know what? Describe to us what you need some consultation on. We're going to help you find another pastor in the Church of God of Prophecy. They may be from the state of Kentucky. They could be from another area as well. And we're going to connect you with them for that mentoring or that consultation. And so it could be really fruitful, but it's going to require our pastors to say, hey, I need some consultation here. And there's no shame in that.
No, there's no shame in that. I can tell you that I all the time, I'm reaching out to people to help me and help me with things that maybe I need a little wisdom on, or need a little experience on, or need some advice all the time. Bishop Sutton is always there for me, and other state bishops, but also I serve for others in that same light. Even folks outside of the state of Kentucky may call me and ask, hey, how do you do this? Or how do you do this? So yeah, let's help each other. And like you said, there's no shame in that.
Absolutely. So then we concluded this section by asking what I felt like was a really powerful question. If you were in the driver's seat, if you could change one thing about state leadership development and discipleship ministries, what would it be? And 45% of our pastors, and again, this was one of those open-ended responses, so we went through and we sorted them into categories, but 45% of our pastors indicated that they were satisfied with leadership development and discipleship and wouldn't change anything. And I think that's a moment of celebration.
Yeah, it is.
That's an encouragement for almost half of our pastors to say, you know what, we've got great leadership development systems happening in the state of Kentucky. And so this isn't just what do we need to do better, but it's opportunities for celebration.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. And one thing that's made a difference on that, and I'm just going to say it, is that your involvement. We are one of the few states that have a leadership development coordinator, and that have, even you serve on a part-time basis, but you also, you're a pastor, so you have a unique perspective because you see it from both needs and what you're delivering. But I see that as a huge benefit to us, is to have you serving in this capacity and bringing this to our attention. So yeah, we always want to do better, but to know that almost half of you say, hey, we see some good things happening already. We just want to continue in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then we saw, 22% shared some type of concern about accessibility and the deliverability of it. And this ranged from, we would like things that are closer to us, things that are accessible to bivocational pastors, and which we saw that in some other responses as well. And so one thing that I just want to affirm to our pastors is we hear you, and we are making plans to make things more accessible to you. That doesn't mean that the things that we have been doing, we're going to stop doing altogether. That just means we're going to add some additional options. So you're still going to see some lunch and learns that require some in-person participation, but then you're also going to see some statewide Zoom calls like we have coming up on April 16th, where if you can't be here in person for the lunch and learn, then you can be on a Zoom call that night. You can still get continuing education credit. You can still get that leadership development. And so we're working on that as well.
Amen. It's great.
Well, let's shift gears a little bit and jump into our next section, which is youth and children's ministry. And so let's just dive into some of that data here.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, if we look at the long-term viability of our churches, this is where this is the heart of it, is youth and children's ministries. And I've been a youth minister and children's minister for all my life, it seems like. Because no matter what we do, if we don't have that next generation coming up, then we're gonna be in trouble.
Yeah,
let's just call it what it is. And I know that some churches we will see are struggling. I'll say that very respectfully. But the good thing is there are ways for us to compensate for that, and we're going to talk about that. So. I think the first question was, do you currently have any of the following? Choose all that apply. A paid youth pastor, almost 8%. Youth pastor volunteer, about almost 30%. Children pastor paid, 8%. And then children pastor volunteer, 34%, and then neither, 52%.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll raise my hand and say, hey, I'm one of those pastors. I can say, I don't have either. I don't have a volunteer youth pastor, certainly don't have a paid youth pastor, and don't have a paid or volunteer children's pastor either. And, one of the things that I just want to encourage our pastors in is you can still do youth ministry.
Sure you can.
You can still do children's ministry. And that helps us from our end as well of creating resources for our churches that aren't dependent upon there being a youth pastor or a children's pastor, because sometimes that's just not in the cards for our churches at the moment. But then we can also help show them a pathway to this is how we can raise some leaders and reach some leaders and get them established in the local church.
And I think it can be let's just call it a danger if we feel like we can hire a youth pastor or hire a children's pastor and say, here, do it all.
Ooh, certainly.
Because then the children or youth are removed from the life of the church.
Yeah.
They're not being mentored or developed or have connection with members and attendees of the church. So I think it's, we want to have youth pastors and children's pastors, but at the same time, we want the church involved with that ministry.
Yeah.
We've got to have that, because otherwise they're missing something.
Yeah.
They're missing something.
And on the flip side of the coin, we see that almost half of our churches do have either a paid or volunteer children's pastor, a youth pastor. And, as we piggyback on leadership development, we want to see those leaders get involved in our state opportunities as well.
Sure. I think the next question is approximately how many active youth, 6th through 12th grade, attend your church? And out of the responses, we had about, 0 had 18%, 1 to 5 had 39%, which is the lion's share. 6 to 10 attendees, then there's 24%, 11 to 15, 13%, and then 15 or more, that was lower.
Yeah.
It was a lower percentage. But this is really good information to have about the average attendance of our churches as far as youth is concerned.
And absolutely. And again, I want to point out moments of celebration. When we look at this, we can see that over 80% of our churches in the state of Kentucky have at least one teenager. I mean, let's just thank you, Lord.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lord, that over 80% of our churches in the state of Kentucky have at least one teenager in their congregation. We want to equip those churches. We also want to help our 18% who have a heart for youth ministry, but don't have any teens in their church right now.
Right.
Then we ask that same question, but then we move to children's ministry.
Yeah, and so 0. I don't. That was something that really stood out, right?
Yeah.
None of our churches said that they had 0 children.
Absolutely. And that to me, I almost fell out of my chair
that's great.
when I saw that. And that, again, was one of those, Father, we just thank you.
Yes.
Lord, we just praise you that in every single one of our pastors that responded to this survey say, we have at least one child in our church. And I know that sometimes we would look at that and say, well, we just have one. But look at it and say, this is a child who we have the opportunity to instill kingdom principles in, to lead them in a relationship with God. We have an opportunity to impact their eternal destination. And so I think that was really encouraging. But we also saw some great percentages in the other categories. Yeah,
53% said they had 1 to 5 kids. Around 24% had 6 to 10, and then 13% said 11 to 15. So almost, that 11% have 15 or more kids. Just think about that. A children's ministry, you don't have to judge it by the numbers, okay? Yeah. If you have a large number attending, great. But if you have 1 or 2 or 5 or whatever, each one of those are important.
Absolutely.
And what would happen if we concentrated on that one and loved them so much? They're going to have to tell their friends about it, right? So good news travels fast.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
So I thought that was encouraging.
Yes.
I really liked to see that data.
All right, which of the following is most beneficial to your local church's youth ministry program? Youth camp. was 52%. So that was the
Yeah.
number, and that's coming up.
Yeah.
It's coming up this summer, and you guys will be hearing more about that. Applications and everything will be ready, and you can register your kids for camp. But Empower at another great percentage, 34%. District revivals, 18%. Youth leader trainings, 31%, and then mentoring programs, 13%. So all of these are great ways to bless your youth ministry.
Absolutely. And then we went and we asked that same exact question, but then we applied it to children's ministry. And we had some different data that popped up there.
Right. Again, 50%. Still, youth camp is big. But look down there, kids ministry training, 57%. So that beat youth camp.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And again, Sister Sandra has been having some of those.
Knocking it out of the park.
Yeah, she's been doing those kids ministry training. So, and then district revivals, 8%, and then mentoring programs, 21%.
Yeah, and I think this is just helpful for us to know at the state level, where is it most beneficial for us to focus our energy?
Right.
We want to, if you say, hey, these are the top things that are having an impact on us, we want to give the lion's share of our energy into those areas rather than pouring ourselves into something that is going to have still a good impact, but not as significant. So, and then we ask, what is the greatest need in children's and youth ministries right now? Take us through that, Bishop.
Yeah, 24% said outreach strategy.
Yeah.
21% volunteer recruitment, 13% leadership training, 11% parent engagement, and 11% retention of older teens. That follows our data from earlier questions,
yeah, it does.
right? Outreach strategies, volunteers, having new leaders, and then training existing leaders. It's true for whatever ministry you have, whether
Absolutely.
it's youth and children or any other ministry.
And again, part of the reason we're sharing this data is because we're going to allow this to drive the car, so to speak, or drive the bus when we are organizing some of our children's ministry trainings and our youth ministries trainings. We're going to go back to this data and say, okay, where are our people telling us we need help? We need some information. We need some new strategies. We're going to be going to this. So if you see us talking about some of these things, we're not just pulling it out of thin air.
Right.
We're responding to the voices of our pastors.
That's right. That's right. And then would you and your leaders participate in a quarterly Zoom gathering for youth leaders? Wow. 84%.
I
Yes.
know.
Yeah.
I thought that was just so amazing. Again, because we want to know some of this information before we take action on it, right? Because if I start doing a quarterly Zoom meeting and the percentages were reversed on that, then that identifies something that could be good in theory, but not great in practicality. But here we have our churches saying overwhelmingly, yes, please have a quarterly Zoom call that's a training for our youth leaders. We would love to participate in that. I thought that was really encouraging, and we saw a similar response from children as well.
Yeah. The last thing we want to do is put another thing on your calendar that's not going to meet a need for you.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's really the reason for the survey is that we could find out what's going to be most beneficial for us to provide for you.
Absolutely.
So,
So, as we've been talking about children's and youth ministry, a natural segue is for us to talk about our camping ministry. Again, when we said what is most beneficial to your youth and children's ministry, on both of those, it was like 50% or higher. Our churches were saying this is a vital component of our local ministry. And I think that's a really good way to look at it. It's not just a state ministry, but it is an investment into our local churches as well. And so we wanted to gather some information about it as well. And so we had some discussion. We had several questions in there about length and pricing. And so I just want to share some of that data with you. It won't be on the screen. I'm going to read it off to you. But regarding Hotshot Camp, over 71% of our pastors said that they would prefer a one-night option at a cheaper cost.
Yeah, that's our little guys.
Yes, that's our 7 to 10, 7 to 9.
Yeah.
Then we had junior camp options. Said 50% of our pastors said that 2 nights at a cheaper cost, and 29% said 3 nights at a moderate cost, which would be a reduction of the length of what we currently have for junior camp, which is that 10 to 12 range. And then at teen camp, this one surprised me.
Yeah.
Over 63% said that they wanted 3 nights or less and a cheaper cost. And so as we got into that data, we started actually digging into things, saying,
Yeah.
okay, these are the voices of our pastors. Now, what is reasonable? What is actually doable for us? And so we began to do a cost analysis of what does the pricing structure of camping ministries look like, and how does it impact the overall price of camp when we start adding nights or taking nights away. And we found some interesting things.
We did, and I'm glad you're sharing this part, because it's not always a correlation, right, between certain data points.
Yeah.
If we think that, well, price is the most important thing at this time, which I think that's really what the pastors were saying.
Yeah.
We need a way to get the price down. And so if that means cutting days, we would like that over the experience of camp, So share this is going to be interesting, and share this with our pastors and help us all understand kind of where we're going and why we're going there.
Yeah, so let me share some of the facts with our pastors. We did a cost analysis of camping ministry 2025. And for 2 weeks of camp, which included teen camp, hot shot camp, junior camp, it cost over $43,000 for us to facilitate 2 weeks at Camp Nakayo. And that's broken down in a lot of different categories. We do have a rental cost that we pay to Camp Nakayo. And I will say that we have a much, much lower rental cost than what outside organizations do. But that's because somebody's got to pay the light bill.
Right.
Somebody's got to pay the water bill. Somebody's got to pay for the toilet paper to go in the bathrooms.
That's
but when we're looking at $43,000, the rental cost is actually one of the smaller figures in the amount of what we're talking about.
And even that rental cost does not cover a lot of expenses that Camp Nakayo, the entity of Camp Nakayo, has. So this rental cost, the daily usage, it's really a usage. Is what it is, and it just helps us offset some of the costs.
Absolutely.
But it's quite a reasonable rate.
Yes, absolutely.
Very reasonable.
But then we also, identified that many of the costs associated with camping ministry are static costs. Meaning that if we reduce the amount of nights, that cost doesn't actually get cheaper. If we have 100 kids come and we're buying t-shirts for all of them, that t-shirt didn't get cheaper because they were here one less night.
Right.
If we're bringing in an evangelist and we're paying their expenses to travel, that doesn't get cheaper.
That's right.
Just because we do one less night. And those are just 2 examples. There are several categories where those costs are static.
Background checks, all these things we do.
Which really creates this dynamic where it's actually easier to add additional nights and not have a major jump in cost than it is to say, well, let's take a night away and cut the price by $40 or $50. It's just not. The
numbers
feasible.
doesn't work.
No. And we want to share this because we have a stewardship responsibility. We have a biblical responsibility to make wise financial decisions. And if there was a world where we could do a 2-night camp and charge everybody $40, then I could understand why that would be a much more enticing option. But it's simply not the case.
No.
One of the cost analysis that we did was between teen camp and junior camp from last year. And junior camp had 1 night less than teen camp did last year. And we found price per camper, it was actually only $5 cheaper to reduce a night. And there were a lot of factors that went into that. But what that is to say is that if we take 2 nights away and we save $10, does that really do what we're talking about? And we felt like the answer to that was no.
Right. Yeah. And when the overall discussion about camp and pricing and all that, as we look at that, we also have to look at what is the cost that other, even Church of God of Prophecies out there are having to pay. And you were a part of the Great Lakes. And what was the cost per camper?
So their cost per camper this year is $340.
Wow.
And so that's a moment where we can say, again, praise the Lord.
Yeah.
Because, we do have a resource that they don't have. We
Right.
have a campground,
Right.
and they have to rent, but we're not anywhere near
Right.
a $340 cost
That's right.
per camper.
That's right.
And so we have to take some action items on that. Before we get to some of those action items, let's talk about this question, which we asked. And it was, at what price per camper does participation from your church begin to drop significantly? 42% said that after $100, that participation is going down. Another 18% said once we get to $125, it's going down. 16% said it's going down at $150. And we understand that.
Yes.
That's
Right.
very real, especially if you are a normative sized church and you're in that, less than 50 people in your congregation. Sometimes kids come out of the woodwork in the community that want to go to church camp. And if a 30-person church is trying to send 10, 15 kids to camp,
Right.
all of a sudden that becomes cost prohibitive.
Right.
So one of the things that the state wants to make the commitment of is that if you have kids that want to go and they can't afford it and the church can't afford to help them get there, that's a moment where you pick up the phone call, or you pick up the phone, you call Stetson, you call Bishop White, and you say, hey, I've got these kids, what can we do to help them get there? And just share your heart on that as well.
Yeah, so the Lord gave me a figure in mind that we want to raise some funds for scholarships. And what the Lord told me is get enough for 30 scholarships. So I think it would be powerful if we had the amount of money we need, and I'm going to be talking with individuals, I'm going to be talking with churches about sowing into the lives of young people and children so that we can sponsor 30 kids this year at Camp Nicaea.
Yeah,
and that way, if anyone cannot come because of money, that reason is gone.
Yeah.
I will tell you, I came to camp because somebody paid my way.
Praise the Lord.
I would not have been able to come if somebody from the church did not pay my way. And it made a tremendous impact on my life. And so there are more kids out there that I believe we want to open the door for by sponsorship.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, let's talk about some changes that we are going to be making to camping ministry moving forward. It is our responsibility to do that cost analysis, which we did, and we found several things, which I think would be enlightening for our pastors to know about. And so one of those things was that while Camping Ministries has appeared to run in the black for the last few years, that this is only due to the fact that we have had several generous donors who have helped Camping Ministry get from the negative into the positive.
Right.
And we praise the Lord for those. But what that also shows us is that our financial structure, it needs some reworking.
Right.
Because it's dangerous, should I say, to rely on donations to be able to break even.
Right.
We need to price our camping ministries in a way so that we know we're going to run in the black.
Right.
And then if we get donations, we can use those for the kids who can't afford to come. We can use those donations for camping equipment and things of that nature.
Exactly.
And then we also talked about the fact that for a while now, camp workers, I should say camp volunteers, because it's not a job, it's a volunteer position. They've been expected to pay their way. They've had a cost of $50 in order to be able to come. And this is, we talked about this. We said this is a flawed structure because volunteers shouldn't be expected to pay to serve.
Right. Stetson, this might be news to our pastors.
Yeah.
They might not even know that for a long time, anyone that served in camping ministry, they had to pay that $50 registration fee. And even that did not cover the true expense of them being there with food and everything else. But we felt like that this is really the wrong culture for us to have.
Yeah.
So we're changing that culture, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. And one of the things that we identified too is there were a few areas where we could say, you know what, we can do a little bit better there. In our spending habits, we can cut some things. So we've got some action steps. One, and the biggest, is staff are not going to be expected to pay their way to camp any longer.
Praise the Lord.
Absolutely.
That's a victory right there.
Yes, that is a celebration. We want to remove the barriers to volunteering at camp. And we understand that a lot of individuals are going to have to take vacation time or PTO or take time away from their spouse or their kids in order to serve. We don't want there to be a financial burden as well. And so moving forward, starting this year, this isn't off in the future. This is this year, all camp staff will not have to pay their way. But this means that we're going to have to make some other changes as well. And so one of those is that we're making several significant cuts to the budget. We've identified some areas. I've already met with the camping directors. They're on board with it. They're good with it. And so we're making some of those cuts. But there also has to be some price increases. And this is where it might feel, some pastors might be like, well, hang on a second. We said we wanted cheaper prices. And we're actually getting a slightly higher price. And that's why we wanted to have this conversation. To say, we heard your voices. Let us explain that reducing the cost and reducing the length of camp, it's really not feasible.
Yeah, I want to say something about that. Some very in-depth cost accounting was done on what it costs to do camp. And when you ran the numbers, it just is not feasible to operate the camp, even at the prices that we had last year.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not, because prices for everything has skyrocketed.
Yeah.
And we must be good stewards.
Yes.
And since we're giving scholarships to those kids that can't afford to come, there would really be no reason for us not to make this move. We want to be financially stable and operate this camp with excellence.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you will notice that this year there's a $25 increase to both teen camp and junior camp. However, we are not increasing the price on hotshot camp. And we did this strategically. And the price for teen camp went up a little bit more, and the price for junior camp went up a little bit more, so that we could say hotshot is not getting a price increase. And you used a term with me, you called it a feeder program. And explain that to our pastors.
Okay, so kids, their first interaction with camp would be hotshot. Can you imagine a 7-year-old child coming to camp and experiencing this 2-night, 3-day adventure where they get to experience this camp for the first time? All right. If we can create a great experience for them and make it as affordable as we possibly can, then that kid will continue to come to camp, right?
Yeah.
But that's going to have to happen, because I've been looking over the numbers, Stetson, and at least for the last 3 or 4, well, since I've been here, hotshot has always run in the red.
Yeah.
And it's because there's not enough days, and the price, we kept it low to get kids here. So it's one of those things where we have to invest in it.
Yes,
we have to sow into it, and that's what we're doing with hotshot camp.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're going to see those changes coming to camp. Well, we wanted to have that conversation with you, and I'm excited to let you know that even as you're watching this tonight, camp applications are going out today and will be accessible. You can start filling those out online, and we'll have more information coming out about camp very soon. But let's shift gears again a little bit, Bishop White, and let's talk about the sections labeled state events and state office support.
Okay. Well, the first question was, what are the primary barriers that prevent your church from participating in state events? And it was choose all that apply. So cost was about 32%. Travel distance, that was the highest, 44%. And our state is wide.
Yeah.
I think our farthest church, it's about 4 hours to get here, 4.5, depending on traffic. But scheduling conflicts, about 40%. Sunday conflicts, about 32%. Lack of youth participation, lack of communication about the event, uncertainty about the value added. All these point to just different barriers, but the number one, travel distance, I think that and Sunday scheduling conflicts and Sunday conflicts. Those are some areas where, again, we're looking at how can we mitigate that.
Yeah.
What can we do as a state office to make, because this is why this whole survey was done in the first place. I mentioned to all of our pastors that were at Empower and that were at our pastors conference, I said to them, we do not want to just have events to have events.
Right.
We want to know what's going to be best for you.
Yeah.
And we're finding out. We're finding out some of that information.
Yeah, and I thought that 24% about uncertainty about value added. That's not on the pastors, right? That's on us.
Right.
That we have to communicate not just, hey, we're having an event,
Right.
but this is how it is going to be a blessing
Right.
to you personally and to your ministry. So I thought that was good information.
Then in which months of the year would you and your church be most likely to attend a state event? By far, it's June.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, probably in their mind, they're thinking camp.
Oh, they have to be thinking about camp.
Yeah. But, some of those winter months is low. November, December, they're probably thinking, well, there's holidays around that time.
Yeah.
So while we would not schedule an event near Thanksgiving or near Christmas,
Right.
there are some other times in November, December, early part of the month where we would do some things. But this is really good information, June and July.
One of my favorite state events is the Camp Nikao Christmas concert.
Yeah.
And you got to do that in December.
Oh, yeah,
You're not having a Christmas concert in June.
That's
so
right.
that's one of those perimeter things.
Right. Which of the following costs are comfortable for your church members to be able to attend a state event? Select all that apply. State events include Empower Marriage Retreat, Oasis Worship Conference. So, 0 to 25 was about 24%, 25 to 50, 34%, 50 to 75, 21%, 75 to 100 was 31%, 100 to 125 was 10.5%, 125 to 150 is 5%, and 150 to 200 and 200 to 300, again, about 5%. And then 300, 400, or 400 plus, we had 0% that thought that would be comfortable.
Yeah.
So we see in this the price point, the expectation.
Yeah.
We're not always able to meet that.
Right.
Just with all transparency, to do certain events, it costs more. It costs us more.
Yeah.
We're not trying to make money off events, but we want to do things right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We want to do things in excellence. But this gave us a good example of what people were thinking.
Yeah. I think a couple things for us to keep in mind as we look at this is one, we're never profiting off of state ministry events. Right. If we do have an excess from, an Empower, for instance, then that money would just go right back into the ministry.
Right back in.
That's not getting dished out to anybody.
No.
So nobody's getting rich off of state events, certainly.
No.
But, also I can take off my state hat for a moment
Yeah.
and I can put on my pastor hat.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I've recognized as a responsibility to my local congregation is to communicate ministry costs money.
Yes.
And there's this weird, almost like wormhole effect that happens that when we're in our local church context, we are very mindful of the fact that ministry costs money.
Right.
But then sometimes there's this transition to state ministry, and there's this perception that, because it's at Camp Nikao, there shouldn't be a cost.
Right.
Because it's a state ministry, it should be free. And the reality is, again, the food has to be paid for by something.
Yeah.
The electric bill has to be paid for.
Sure.
The water bill has to be paid for. We're bringing in speakers. We have to pay their travel expenses.
Right.
We want to give them a love offering. So all of those things are calculated into when we have a cost for an event. Those are some of the factors.
Exactly. How do you prefer to receive information about state events? Email, those 73%, text message, 52%, Facebook, 23%, website, 26%, direct phone call, 23%, through district leadership, almost 8%, in the mail, 34%. And we use all of these, but it's really good to see that email is something that people value. That costs us nothing.
Yeah.
Emails don't cost a thing for us to send them to you. I would encourage you, if you have an email address, which I hope all of you do, check it every day.
Yes.
Check it every day. It's like going to the mailbox. You're going to go to your mailbox at your home every day. Get in the habit of checking your email every day. Because there's going to be information in there.
Yeah. And a good rule of thumb is that if you go 30 days and you haven't received an email from somebody in the state office, there's something wrong with
Something
your
wrong.
email
Yeah,
address.
yeah,
It's
that's
not
right.
that we're not sending emails,
Right.
but sometimes people change their email addresses and we don't get that information. So,
Sure.
if that happens, if you're finding out, man, it's been a while since I've
Right.
gotten an email from Stetson or Bishop White or Sister Carol, high chance we don't have the correct email address
That's right.
for you anymore. And then I also noticed a high percentage of text message. Almost 53% said, hey, we want to receive a text message.
Right.
So I ran to Sister Carol. I said, Sister Carol, we've got this function on One Call
Right.
that we can send out text messages. And she said, well, yeah, Stetson, we do. We tried to do that before, but pastors have to opt in
Right.
in order to receive a text message. The way that group messaging platforms work is that there has to be an agreement by the recipient to receive that text message.
Which is good.
Yeah.
Because you don't want random, unnecessary text messages.
Right. And we're not talking about a group chat. You're not
No,
going to be
no,
texted
no.
in a group message with 50 other pastors.
No.
Nobody wants that.
No.
It would be a direct text to your phone, much like the One Call is a direct call to your phone, but we can't send that text message unless you opt in. So if you're one of our 53% of our pastors that wants to receive that text message, please reach out to Sister Carol. Find out what you need to do to opt into that so that she can send you text messages.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
All right. Do you feel adequately informed about state opportunities? Again, this is a big celebration for
Oh,
me.
yeah, this was a great one.
Yeah, almost 80% said yes.
Yeah.
That they feel informed, adequately informed. We want to continue to do that and do better at that. But then also somewhat was 21%. So I don't think anybody said no.
Yeah, we
No.
didn't have anybody say we have no idea what's going on.
Right. So we're going to continue that. We make our commitment to you. We're going to continue to inform you and communicate with you because that's what we're here to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
How helpful are current state events, trainings, and communications to your ministry? Not helpful at all was a small percentage. Somewhat helpful, 39%, almost 40%. Helpful, again, almost 40%, and then very helpful, 16%.
Yeah.
So that's good. That's
Yeah.
good. We want to be helpful to you.
Yeah, tells us we're on the right track with some things,
Right.
but as anybody, we have some area where we can
do.
improve.
We
and,
do.
and that's an okay thing.
It is.
And we're glad to know that as well.
Yeah. And then what are the three greatest challenges your church is currently facing? 34% said financial constraints and budget limitations, which we can understand that. We operate too at the state office off of a budget. 32% said lack of volunteer engagement. Again, goes back to some of the previous data. 26% developing new leaders. Again, this is a theme that continues to come up. 26% reaching younger generations.
Yeah.
And then 24% evangelism and community outreach. This is amazing to see these things. It just keeps coming back the same things, which shows that this survey was very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
In what areas do you most need practical support from the state office right now? 34% outreach, 29% leadership development, 24% discipleship resources, 18% evangelism, 16% finance and stewardship, 16% reaching the next generation. It's again, over and over, the same information.
Yep.
Same information. And we're listening, and we want to do that. We want to be here for you and provide resources to help you in these areas.
Yeah, and, let me just jump in here and say too, you might be a pastor who is watching this right now, and maybe you didn't respond in one of those categories, but you have a great resource in one of those categories. This goes all the way back to, those mentoring and consultation opportunities. You may be sitting here and thinking, I'm sitting on a gold mine.
Right.
Tell us when you've got an innovative strategy for something so that we can get that information out. And it might look like bringing in a pastor to teach at a lunch and learn.
Right.
It may look like doing a Zoom call with a pastor sharing some practical, proven, real world expertise.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be speaking to some of these things very soon.
And then how can the state office better support your church's mission in your local community? 63% said they were unsure or were satisfied and no change was needed. So, some said that we're helping or they didn't know ways that we could help better. 16% said prayer, 9% said leadership development, 9% district level collaboration, which is good, 6% outreach and growth strategies, and 6% structural support. So there again, we're listening, and even though a high percentage said that no change was needed, we want to continue to look for ways that we can assist you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we'll wrap up this section with what resources do you wish you had access to that would help your church grow or become healthier? And we had some top responses here.
Yeah, leadership development, people, staffing, volunteers, discipleship resources.
Yeah, again, which again are those top three that we saw over and over and over throughout. So we're going to be addressing.
Maybe we need to have a conference on those three things.
Oh, that would be powerful.
Yeah. I mean, it would be great.
Yeah.
Which I know that Healthy Church Dynamics, some of that material addresses all of this.
Yeah, and it is available to our pastors online.
It is.
On our Leadership Development Discipleship YouTube page. You can go back and watch all of those sessions. And while that doesn't get you the certificate, because you have to be in an in-person training to get the certificate, you still have access to the content, which is the valuable part of it.
Yeah.
So let's talk. We had a short section in here about personal stewardship. And I want you to speak to those items about personal stewardship for just a moment, Bishop White. And, just jump right in there for us.
Yeah, that first question was, do you believe that tithing is biblical? 100% said yes.
Praise the Lord.
Yes. Do you believe tithing is a biblical concept? 100% said yes, which I would expect that. And I'm glad, really, as a state bishop, I'm glad that that's the response that we received.
Yeah.
But then the next question was interesting in that it said, do you receive tithes from your local church? 76% said they did, and then 23% said that they did not. So obviously they're bivocational and receive their income from their job and not their church.
Yeah.
But then this is the question I want to look at briefly. Do you faithfully tithe and report monthly to the state office? 84% said they do, and about 16% said they do not. So this is the point that I want to make right here. Since we all believe it's biblical, and since we all have made commitments as ministers and we believe in accountability, I'm saying to all this, the 16%, I'm just saying to you as lovingly as I can, that get your reports caught up and begin tithing so that you will be you will have a good conscience towards this question, right? And we will do everything we can to help you in that. Right?
And the Lord is faithful to those who are faithful.
Yes, He is.
And I can tell from my own life experiences so many financial blessings that came out of nowhere that were absolutely supernatural. And I believe that's a fruit of tithing. And so it's not a burden.
No, it's not.
To tithe. It's actually...
Well, it's the Lord's money.
Absolutely.
It's His money.
Absolutely.
We're giving Him back what belongs to Him. Plus we give offerings, right?
Absolutely.
We give offerings.
Yeah. So let's talk just really quickly about our last section. And we have some exciting things in this section.
Yeah.
So we did some questions about marriage ministry. And first, we asked the question, do you think a state-sponsored marriage ministry retreat is necessary? And 63% said yes, and 37-ish% said no. But then we had a follow-up question, which we thought was pretty telling. Have you ever attended a state marriage retreat? And about 66% said yes, and 34% said no. And so we don't know this for certain, but we think there's a pretty strong correlation in that the pastors that say, well, we don't think it's necessary, have likely never been. And
That's fair.
And I will tell you as a pastor who has been, that I found it very helpful. And, both Miranda and I felt our marriage was healthy going into it. We weren't in a difficult situation, but it was just a great, refreshing time to be around other couples and to be ministered to.
Right.
As a pastor, you do not get ministered to very often.
Right.
And so a state marriage retreat is an opportunity for that to happen. But then we wanted to dig a little bit deeper. And so we asked the question, what type of event would meet the needs of your church most effectively? And we asked about a weekend marriage retreat, which has historically been what we've done here in the
That's
state of
right.
Kentucky.
That's right.
Only 24% of pastors said that's the option that we want. That was telling.
Yes.
That's one of those moments where you have to kind of
Yeah.
and really digest it. But then we had 29% said that a one-day marriage conference would be beneficial. And then we said around 47% said a hybrid event where there's one day of content, but there is an option for couples to make it into a weekend getaway.
Yeah.
And then the next question that followed that up, which really supported it, was, does missing a Sunday service impact your decision to attend or recommend a weekend marriage retreat to your congregation? 58% of our pastors said yes.
Yeah.
And again, I can take my state hat off.
Right.
And I can put that pastor hat
Right.
on. I have attended on a weekend event, and I have encouraged my members to do so. But I can understand the stressor that puts on a church, especially of one of our smaller churches, where if 3 or 4 couples take that weekend to go to the marriage retreat, then that could be everybody that's on your worship team and your ushers and your deacons and everything. So Marriage Ministries in the state of Kentucky is listening to the feedback. And moving forward, Marriage Enrichment will focus on a one-day conference of content that will have supplemented resources throughout the year for our local churches to be able to do marriage studies or Bible studies or check-ins. And then we will give a resource packet for that one-day conference. Say, if you want to make this a weekend getaway, here are our recommended hotels. Here are our recommended restaurants for date night. Here are our recommended date night activities. So that if a couple wants to get away for the whole weekend, they can. If a church wants to take 8 couples and rent a VRBO and say, hey, we're going to take care of the lodging, and then the content is already taken care of. So we're listening. We're changing. And this is a big change.
This is a big change.
This is a big change for the state of Kentucky. We're going from a weekend marriage retreat to a one-day option. Well, we will have all the content taken care of, but you can make it a weekend if you want to.
So that would mean to me, I would see all of our churches, all of our pastors, as many couples as possible come to the one-day event. And then they could come back to their local church, those that needed to, and do ministry there that Sunday morning. The old adage, you can have your cake and eat it too. That's what we're trying to do. And November 7th is when that event is going to be. It will be here in Elizabethtown, and it's going to be a phenomenal event. We have the speakers and worship and everything else, but it'll be something that you could drive to. You could be there for the conference and then get home in plenty of time before it got late.
You can come Saturday morning, attend. So plenty of time to get home Saturday night, be at church on Sunday morning, or you can plan to get a hotel that Friday night, Saturday night, make it a weekend getaway, and we'll be giving you resources.
And it will be cost effective.
Yes, it will.
Since you're not having to pay for lodging and all these things. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if we had to have some key takeaways, something that I thought about this is that I personally am so grateful for the work that our pastors are doing in their local churches. I'm so thankful to you, Pastor, that you took the time to engage in this survey, because it is extremely helpful for us to hear the voices of those who we are trying to minister to and who you're trying to lead, Bishop, and so that what you're experiencing in the field is aligning to what we're doing here at the state office.
That's right. Because I say it around here all the time, we exist to serve our pastors in our churches. That's why we're here. That guides everything that we do. That guides our attitude and how we respond to you. We want to serve you. And so this information is vital to us to make those decisions that are going to really serve you well and provide those areas of resources that you really need.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. So we just want to say thank you so much. We want to be respectful of your time. We said we would keep it to an hour, and I think we're right on schedule for that. Thank you so much for watching this webinar to go over the results of the Pastors Survey in the state of Kentucky. If you have questions, if you have comments, you can reach out to Bishop White. You can reach out to myself and call Sister Carol. We can help explain anything further in detail that you would like to talk about or any questions that you have. But most of all, we just want to say thank you.
We love you. We appreciate you. And thank you again for joining us.